to our Southfield Roundtable, in which we discuss difficult subjects, sort of scary subjects, but we try to do it in a friendly and warm way. Today's subject is huge. Well, all of our subjects are huge, but this one is about libraries in schools. Huge issue. And with me today to discuss this problem, and it is a problem, is first my dear friend Terry Selman, who is a retired teacher who speaks 478 and a half languages and is on our Southfield Library Board. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you very much.
Next we have our, oh dear, I had to do this, yes. We have our City of Southfield Library Director, David Ewick, who came to town 10 years ago.
11.
How did I lose that one?
And a half.
And a half years ago, 11 years ago, 11 and a half.
Time flies.
And I was one of the lucky people that was able to vote him in, and he fell into a tremendous difficulty here. He thought he was coming to a wonderful town, which it is,
Yes, the town is fine.
but an awful, awful economic crash.
The economic crash happened about 6 months after I arrived.
Exactly. But he has soldiered through with an amazing crew in our city, so welcome, David.
Thank you.
And now a new person to me, a person who, well, I mean, take a look at her. Can you please take a look at her? And she is Yolanda Charles, and she is on our Southfield Board of Education board. And welcome. I know you fell into something, again, very difficult. Why did you make yourself be on this board?
Actually, it was a vacancy back in 2010. And so I actually ran as a write-in just to see if it would be something that I could work with. So the rest is kind of history now. But yeah, it was a vacancy.
Wow. And besides being on the board, what do you do?
Oh, I'm a technology wonk. So I love everything to do with technology. I kid sometimes by saying in the past I used to work at Radio Shack. Not necessarily what, girls or
Yes.
young ladies. And so one of my passions is definitely STEM and
Good.
STEAM. So this is
excellent.
right up my alley.
You are so good for this. This is welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very
Welcome.
much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Next we have Daryl Joyce. And I met Daryl because there he was, sitting in a classroom, one of three grown-ups in this room. I thought, who is this person sitting with these kids? Turned out he's on the school board, and he's been you have been so supportive.
Thank you.
So supportive.
Yes.
Welcome. So how did you get involved?
Well, I started off back in 1995, appointed to the curriculum development team for Southfield Public Schools, and that was a position that was appointed to me by Marlene Davis, Dr. Marlene Davis.
Do you remember her?
And so, and at that time, I was very, very involved in the schools, in volunteering and PTA, and then matriculated all the way to about 5 years ago, where the superintendent of Southfield Public Schools, Dr. Cook Robinson, she asked me to see me volunteer in the school. She asked me to chair the millage, and so for school millage. And so I participated in that, and halfway through, she spoke to me and says, "Hey, we need you on the board. You need to give it a try." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll think about it."
So 5 minutes later, you decided.
Yes, yes, I decided, and I'm very happy to be on the board. I'm vice president at this point in time, and Yolanda Smith Charles is president. We have a great team. We have a lot of issues. We don't see eye to eye on everything, which you're not supposed to. But we still make sure that what we're doing is making sure we move the district forward as a school system. So I'm enjoying it.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have you, both of you, and of course you too. And so let's start out with this. I have to tell you. I mean, you all know this. You may not, but I have been a rabid rabid library person since I was 6 years old. Because growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, and living on a street where 6 houses up the road was a main road, and on the other side of that road was our library. And we lived in that library, my twin and I. We lived there. And we pulled out books, read them, took them back the next day. Finally, the librarian said, "Girls, could you keep them 3 days so we know how to circulate?" So that is my background in that. And then coming here, I fell into an accidental job at our library. And I fell in love with that library. So it just continues on. And working with people and being in the schools as well. And I'm looking at these children who love their library, and they come in and out with books, piles of books, because they've gotten them at the library. And besides the books, of course, I'm a champion of the library. So Terry.
There's more than books, though. There's also
right.
programming.
Mm-hmm.
There's also programming, and it's very, very important. I've taught high school and I taught middle school, and my experience in middle school is that we had silent sustained reading, and the young men had maybe a harder time than the young ladies in picking books that were both age appropriate and subject appropriate. And we had the Harry Potter books, and they became very popular with the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders. But you need a librarian to start that whole process. When the kids are preschool and kindergarten and 1st grade and 2nd grade, all through elementary, 1 day a week or 2 days a week, the teacher troops them down to the library. They learn to sit quietly. Otherwise, how do you learn that kind of a skill? You have to be taught. And you get the librarian reading. We just lost Gail Gilman,
Yes.
who's an amazing librarian and a children's librarian and storyteller. And that's when they fall in love with reading, when they're kids. Then, of course, later on, it's helpful to have a reference librarian or somebody who can really help. But it starts very young. It starts just with the programming. And our library has a lot of programs that don't necessarily involve sitting around in a circle and reading a book with an adult, but things that have come out of literature.
Okay, I hate her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, if I may,
No, you may not, but go ahead.
well, that hasn't stopped me before. To me, this is a national problem. But not only is it a national problem, but it's a Michigan problem, but it's an economic problem.
Absolutely.
My wife is a high school counselor, and one of the things that she and I have discussed over and over again is that schools use the money that they have available in the best way that they see fit. And most of the time, it's well allocated. So for most of the schools, even the schools that you might say are failing, they're doing the best they can with the money they have. The problem, and I see this with the public libraries too, the problem is funding. What's funded is what's covered.
What's happening?
That's what's happening. Without mandates, legislative mandates stating that there shall be a school librarian at X number of hours per week in each school, it won't happen. When we were in Indiana, there was a mandate that said school counselors may have no more than 250 students.
Wow.
Here, there is no such mandate. She was the only counselor in a school of 600. She never felt that she was able to give those students their due. This is a problem that, to me, transcends the local level, because we have to have people at the state and the national level who believe in and support and will put their money where their mouth is in schools and education. And I believe that, education is so important. There's been study after study that shows that most of the people, more than 65%, according to one of the studies I have with me today, most of those, over 65% of the people who are incarcerated read below literacy levels.
Yes,
They're
below
illiterate.
level.
They're, almost every economic problem that we have in this country can be tied back to a lack of literacy. This is, I've been doing this for 37 years, but it's like a bomb has gone off in my head lately. We're not doing enough for literacy at the public library. But we can only do so much, because for us, people only come if they want to.
Yes, we
And
can't drag them in.
The person who does not like to read or is afraid to read is probably not going to come to the public library.
But he or she will be in school. And that's where we have to focus. We have to get libraries and librarians in the schools. We have to find the money.
So, and I know, we need to help. We need to help you. We need
Yes.
to find out, Yolanda, because I know I saw it across your forehead. You have so much to say. And I just wanted to, I just wanted to show you something, because it's such a huge issue that look at all of this material. I could sit here and read and read and read and read, and we would be doing this till tomorrow morning. So we can't. We can't read all of this, but it is a tremendous issue. And what I also wanted to let you, and you know this, but it needs to be said out loud. Most of our kids, our students, whatever you want to call them, I love kids because I love kids, but they come from homes where either there may not be two parents, or if there are, both of them are working. So they cannot, after school, they cannot take these kidlets to the library. But they should be at a library, and there's no way for them to get there.
Well, it's sadly for the safety factor. You mentioned that you and your sister used to just
Oh yeah,
go
we
on
used
your
to
own.
dance in there, yes.
We can no longer allow kids below a certain age to come in on their own because it's not safe.
Yes.
Because anybody, it's like a bus station. Anyone can walk in.
Thank you for that, Yolanda.
Well, this subject is really, especially this morning, listening to some of the comments just in the last 10 minutes or so. But I do need to start off with just a little paying homage to
Please.
the Southfield Public Library in my life. When I think back to the former structure,
Yes.
and how I was slightly disappointed. Because there was something about parking underneath and being able to walk right in, and
Yes, you're
the
right.
children's section on the 3rd floor or level 3. If you push the button in the elevator,
Yes.
So those memories definitely resonate greatly. And even when I went away to school, I found myself coming back and seeking out, obviously more. Young adult style
Yes, of
literature
course.
and things
Yes.
of that nature, and so it was still something about having that access, and having a card and having to maintain that membership and things of that nature.
That's very good. Go.
And so
yes.
also that piece about responsibility, about being responsible to bring that book back, understanding what a bill
You
is.
had to do that.
Yeah, understanding what a bill is
Yes.
as a 9-year-old, like
Yes.
25 cents. Oh my God, and
Yes.
so it kind of teaches you some of those structures. So that's on the the Southfield Public Library space. K-12, certainly during my time in Southfield Public Schools, naturally, library was a part of the curriculum, and I use the term curriculum much different than I do today. Back then, curriculum just meant what I was forced to do
Yeah.
during my time in the
Right.
building.
Yes,
So
yes.
but an elective, you would select certain electives and things such as that. So I'm probably counter to the norm, because libraries have been so instrumental in my life for so long, even where when I had an elective to pick, I would pick library to help
Fascinating.
Catherine Walker,
Yes.
Maureen Booth, if I could throw out a few fascinating
Go for it.
librarians in my time through the years. And so it's not lost on me that there is something there very tangible with that experience. While on the board, obviously that has changed as far as the structure of how it's rolled out, the library space. And through conversation, and I know we're going to delve in more, so I don't want to take all the fun points, but through conversation, I know and have witnessed it, the library and the librarian have evolved. That role has evolved. And I just appreciate in the city of Southfield, specifically
Especially,
speaking,
yes.
did a good job of not being stagnant. The Southfield Public Library has maintained a freshness, state-of-the-art technology. It's a beacon in Oakland County. I'm proud to say it's in Southfield, things like that. In the schools, however, like Mr. Ewick said, Dave, as he always nudges me, it's Dave.
Yes.
Funds have been a challenge in that space, and how teachers were actually incorporating it into their curriculums, into their structures. And so under the auspices of Dr. Cook Robinson, it was reorganize that library space and how we utilize it. And I think what happens, especially as board members, because we're the 30,000 foot level, as I like to always remind folks, it's not always at the forefront of what we discuss. We've got sometimes hot button issues like, superintendent, budget, keeping schools open. Do we close them? Do we, tear them to the ground so charters don't come in and purchase them? It does get lost in the sauce quite often, but that's why I said this conversation could help Mr. Joyce and I in terms of things we can bring back and discuss with our board, because certainly we don't have all the answers, but we do recognize that with our test scores, again, with some of those practices that you learn as going to the library, we do see that as a room for some opportunity there.
Yes.
So
Thank you for that. And if I may interject, so many of our families, and not only here, but so many families are not reading families.
True.
yeah.
So the only place that our
I see that.
kids, aside from being taken to a library, and maybe those families don't bother because it's not part of their life. So that's where the school libraries come in. And I just want to let you know, I wanted to have yet another person at the table, but every time I called her, she kept saying, nope, 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 because her time is at a maximum. She goes crazy. But she's not a teacher, she's one of the secretaries in one of the schools.
Okay.
And she has next to her desk a box. Within the box are books, because their library is closed. And these kids they evidently don't get to go to our public library. So here are the kids, and there's the books, and they can walk in, take a book, and they have to bring it back to somebody else. And that is what that person has done to help her students in her school. And so people are they understand that there's got to be some kind of a solution here. But before, keep your thought.
Yeah.
Where is it? Is it here?
I'm gonna be short. I just remember as a child, and I do understand how important the library is, because as a child I remember going to the library was the place that you go to respect others as they're reading, but also it was a place where you had to go to silently read.
Yeah.
So it took me away from that phase of reading out loud, even though the teacher in the classroom was emphasizing that you need to do that as you started getting older. But going into the library meant that you read to yourself, you respect, so it was a lot of learning process at being in the library. It was also a place to focus and it wasn't a game. It's not a place for, if you want to jump around, you go out to the recess, out to the playground.
Yes.
But as a library, you get serious, and so the librarian helped for us to, as a child, to see that, because there was people in the library that were studying for tests and studying for certifications, and very serious.
Or even doing research.
Doing research. See, so the library has always been important. But one of the things I want to touch on is Dave brought up a good point. He said the state level,
Yes.
but it's also federal level as well.
Absolutely.
And so we've had the opportunity, the president and I and the rest of the board, of going to different conferences where we talk to board members from all over this country. And so Southfield and Michigan is not the only state that has obstacles in the way.
Absolutely.
One of the things we've made sure in our district, I've seen it myself, is that teachers have taken that position to be proactive. As the libraries were closing, and they're not totally closed in the elementary schools. There is a librarian that comes around once a week at the schools.
Well, that's how, I didn't know that. That's a
Yes, so you know,
Yay.
so I figured I'd throw that in there because I heard what you were saying.
Yeah, yes.
And then at the same time, also the teachers, and I've seen this with my own eyes. So I'm not just guessing and telling you what I've heard someone else say. I'm in the schools and I see it. There's teachers who are taking their students to the library.
Yes.
There might not be a librarian in there, but now the teacher is also a librarian at the same time as being a teacher.
And we make visits to you.
And you made
To
visits too.
classrooms, yes.
And then we've also made strides in some of the schools where our PTA has stepped out and gone out to taking the kids to the libraries and other companies.
You mean as a field trip?
Sometimes it's a field trip, and so they've gained some knowledge of the library and the atmosphere and all that, because that's very important, you know. But then the other point is the parents at home. You know, if the parents are not promoting that reading, you know, and which is something I did as a parent that had 6 children. The 6th child is at Southfield High School now. 5 are already graduated. One of the things we made sure is that our children read, and we were part of that process. I had a son who had some reading problems in 3rd and 4th grade, and we made sure we placed him in the reading literacy program we had at Southfield Public Schools during the summer. And that turned him around because, of course, you know, Dave, and you know, what's Terry, is that if they can't read, the science just does not click.
No.
Math doesn't click.
Nothing.
You know,
Nothing.
nothing clicks.
Reading is the building block.
It's the building
On
block.
everything else, it's the
It's
foundation.
truly the building block. And so we made sure that he got that skill there, you know, to help us as parents.
Of course.
You know, so one of the first things we did as parents is we made sure we recognized it, and it was all for supporting it.
But lucky for their child.
Well, lucky
There
for your
aren't that
son,
enough-
because there
there
are
aren't-
parents who don't know how to recognize the problems, and that librarian is
Yeah.
part of the
Sure,
village.
sure.
We
Oh, yes,
always throw this out.
absolutely.
It takes a village. That librarian is part of the village, who could say to the
Oh, yeah.
classroom teacher, you know, I think Daryl might be dyslexic. Can we get him tested?
Yeah.
What do you think? Oh, wow.
May I interrupt just for, because I wanted to read this in this discussion because I had never seen it before. If I had seen it, it happened too long ago. Lyndon Johnson.
Okay.
This is
Remembering that he started out life as a teacher.
Yes, yes.
that big Baluch.
Yes,
Yes, he did.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
I just made that up.
love it.
I think you did.
Yes.
So anyway, back in April 11th, 1965, he made his remarks on signing the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It says here, education is, and I could hear him, because he did have a twang. I loved that twang. Education is the only valid passport from poverty. We bridge the gap between helplessness and hope for more than 5 million, that's back in 65,
Yeah.
educationally deprived children. We put into the hands of our youth more than 30 million new books, and into many of our schools, their first libraries. That's where, and we still are faced with this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're frustrated as can be.
Yeah.
Well, and to take that even further to what Daryl said, the first teacher of a child
Is the parent.
is their parents.
That's right.
And they've done studies that have shown that parents of children who are economically disadvantaged hear, what is it? I'm not sure the number, but 1 million fewer words from parents. This is by kindergarten age or
Yes.
by preschool
Yeah.
age.
Yes.
They have heard 1 million less words.
Mm-hmm.
The vocabulary is built, 0 to 5, I believe.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
not totally. Of course, we're all still learning new words all the time, we hope. But that idea of that child's core, going back to that cornerstone.
Yes.
A household that has magazines, books, newspapers in the home is providing a child with curiosity,
Yeah.
is providing a child with the idea that there's more than just what's
Space.
here.
Yeah.
When you take a child to the library for preschool or what have you, or not preschool, excuse me, for story time,
Yes.
for something like that, or we're looking at before preschool classes to teach the parents how to teach their children. When you take that child to the library and they see all the things, Mike Horn, who used to be the principal at Southfield High when my son was there, he called me, and he's now at a charter, or no, he's working for Detroit Public Schools, I believe.
Oh, yay.
So I went to Career Day, and he said, you know, there are kids here, and it was a K-8 school, who probably don't realize that there is such a job as a library director, let alone a man doing that. These kids probably have a very narrow slice of what they could be. We're doing this Career Day to broaden that slice. When they go into the library and they see a book that says you could be an astronaut, or you could be an illustrator, it can take a child who has no idea what they want to do, or think that they have no palatable or economic skills, and they say,
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yes.
I don't have to be a bricklayer or a carpenter. I could do this.
Although carpenters and
Oh, of course, but I mean, if that's
I
not what
understand.
what
Exactly.
their
Yes,
love
what they're
is.
led to.
So to me, that idea of getting parents, first of all, to understand, you are a teacher. When you go to the store, ask your child, while they're in the shopping cart, find me something that's blue. Can you find me a square?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
And they, or a circle, and they see a jar, and they say, that's a circle. And you're teaching your child.
Yes.
That's simple.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things I learned recently, there's a thing called vroom.com.
Yes.
VROOM.com. I guess it's done by Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame, which is,
Okay.
let's not go there. But
Okay.
he's killing a lot of bookstores,
Yes, he
but,
is.
Yes, he is.
but he's doing something good with this because, and
Yes.
it has like 1,000 different ways of parents being able to help their child.
Yes.
And the parent can teach the child the alphabet, can teach the child colors, things like that, so that when they enter public schools, they have reached the level of being successful. They can
Yes.
be successful.
Yes.
Without that, their chances of success are so much less.
True. True.
And-
Well, coming from parents that was with that mindset of reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yes. That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
I mean, strongly. I'm left-handed just like you are, Dave.
I'm a lefty, the best people in the world.
And my mom was not so, she was so serious about the reading. But when I started writing, I started doing like this. And she
Of
says,
course.
and she says,
Can't
oh
do
no.
that.
That's
She says,
right.
oh no.
That's right.
She
She says,
That's
so
right.
you're gonna write, I'm gonna show you how to write. So she's right-handed, so she showed me how to write and taught me
yes.
how to write
Yes.
in a way that wouldn't draw attention, but also would be a better writing because
Yes.
she has beautiful handwriting. But
There you go.
just from that, she went to the reading and the math. And so it starts at home. It really does start at home. And it's not a whole lot that a parent has to do to get you on that road to going in that direction.
And then the parent can be a teammate of the teacher,
Yes.
of the schools.
And that's important.
Whether they never attend a PTA meeting
Yeah.
or anything like
Yes.
that,
Yes.
they are still
Yeah.
supporting the
Yes,
schools.
absolutely.
And I think that's kind of changed.
Yeah, it has to change a little
But
bit.
And this-
can I throw out a? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was
You're-
going to
you're-
say,
yeah.
it is fascinating, really, because a lot of the parents that we're referring to missed out on the traditional library experience as well.
Sure they did. Yes. Yes.
Perhaps even missed out on some of those good scaffolding of, strong parents for them to say, hey, is that a square? Or I used to tell, I substitute taught for a while, and I used to tell parents, turn the volume down. And now everyone says it like they came up with it, but I like to think that I coined this concept.
Good girl.
Where you just turn the volume off and make your child read,
Yeah.
the
That's right.
subcaption.
Absolutely.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
so in all of that, I think what I'm hearing is resonating is supporting parents. And in Southfield Public Schools,
Yes.
We've
Yes.
looked at some opportunities there. Nothing's really stuck as far as systemic
Yes,
or
yeah.
long-term, but
Well,
finding
everything's
ways.
Yeah, because their background doesn't help them to
Yeah.
understand what you're
Well,
trying to
yes,
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Because I came from a family where we even made it a point to make going to the library a special day.
Oh, yes.
You know, even though I'm a product from Detroit, there was libraries everywhere.
Oh,
they were all in the neighborhood.
And that
Yeah.
cares
But-
me
but
to see
what
them.
we did is we got on
Yeah.
the bus. My mom got on the bus with us, and we would go to the main library.
Oh, yes.
The whole family
Then
would go
it
to the.
becomes
Yeah.
a joyous
My dad took me.
excursion.
See, so and so that's what made it so exciting, and seeing all the people and seeing the even
And it's
Southfield
and
Library
it's
and seeing all the books and the enthusiasm that people have sitting there reading, all that was a lesson that sticks with you, you know.
And then it's not it's this boring place with all these pages and pages.
right.
There's pictures. There's
Yes,
all
yes.
kinds
Oh,
of
yeah.
things that.
And
that-
exhibits.
To me, it's the creativity, the curiosity, the idea that anything you want, there's information about it
Yeah.
in that building.
in that building.
and
And-
in that
Yes.
collection.
I'd like to get back on a more practical note.
Sure.
Oh, heavens.
Sure. Oh,
Okay.
serious
Because
Terry.
you're all
Serious
100
Terry. History.
You're all 100% right.
Yes, ma'am.
100% right. It occurs to me that perhaps one of the things that we could look at is staffing school libraries as a bridge to better funding
Okay.
with librarians or retired teachers, volunteers, who could actually be those people
With that kind of knowledge,
with
right?
the kind of knowledge that would help. I don't know where we're going to get the books and the computers and the materials from.
Well, in these
let's
closed,
face it.
yes, go ahead,
Excuse
please.
me.
No.
The biggest expense in any library is personnel.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
the
I'm
books,
sure it's the same
books
with
are
schools.
there.
I was going to say,
books
the
are
book,
still
the
there.
And they
materials
can
are
still
still in
put
those
some money
rooms.
into new books.
Yeah, so they didn't close the libraries out and empty them out. The
What
books
they
are still
did
there.
was, what they did was they fired Portes.
Funny you should mention this too, though.
Yes.
Okay.
The Michigan Association for Media and Education, that's called MAME,
Okay.
M-A-M-E.
Dun, dun, dun,
There are
dun,
currently
dun,
three
dun, dun.
three bills
Man.
introduced in the Michigan House that would require a school librarian in every school in the state.
Okay.
The problem is that there's no funding tied to it.
Yeah.
Plus, they are sponsored solely by Democrats.
That's
And
difficult.
This is a
Maybe
Republican.
Republicans don't read.
No, don't say that. But
He's so nice.
logistically speaking, though,
You're right.
in a Michigan and a Republican-controlled House,
It has to
we
be.
need a
It
sponsor
has to
that is
be.
also.
Sure.
Right, right. That's
So
an interesting thought.
it's conceivable if people were to look up the Michigan Association for Media and Education and look at the bills and see if they make some sense. This might be a first step, convincing their
Yeah.
legislators to support this.
But then
Only-
we have to think about funding.
Right. Only 8% of Michigan schools have a certified school librarian on staff.
My. That's a small number.
Michigan ranks 47th out of 50
Wow.
in the country for its students to librarian ratio.
Okay,
I hope
that's
to be
just a
able to share
shame.
this with the I have I'll present a copy of this electronically so it can maybe put at the end of the show, but this is the chart. 66% are buildings with no library staff.
Okay.
16% have uncertified library staff, which is kind of what you were suggesting. Maybe someone,
Better than nothing.
buildings with certified media specialists are 10%,
Wow. Wow.
and then buildings with a certified media specialist, at least one full-time employee, that's the green, the 8%. So you can see
My.
that there's a very low number, and this comes from michiganschooldata.org.
That's a good one.
It's an interesting chart, and to me, it bolsters that idea that if we could find a way, but it has to become a legislative priority.
Yeah.
We have to call
You
our
can't do it.
legislature.
No, we
And I
can't.
also
You
want
can't.
to
Yeah,
interject
has
as
a-
well,
has a
because
tie.
right here on his paper, it does have that title, media specialist. So we've already taken out this concept, and when I was talking about the evolution of the
Yes,
librarian.
yes, yes.
So folks are being asked to do more, and
Right.
it gets all into, your bargaining units,
computers.
Yeah.
And the
your
technology.
collective bargaining
Yes.
groups and folks like that,
Yes,
so they don't want to
yes.
be disenfranchised. And so it
Yes.
just seems like it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach
Oh, yes.
to figure this
But
thing
it
out.
could happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
if people want it badly enough.
Let me throw an evil word out.
Evil.
Evil to me. May
Yes.
not be to you.
Yes.
May not be to our viewers. But I believe that the money is available if we quit funding charter schools with public money.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
wow.
A
another
charter
whole
school
subject.
Jane
is
for
a
president.
private school. A charter school is a private school. It is not a public school.
Yeah, I
And
hesitated
it
about
does not
bringing
have
that up.
to. Well, I'm
You
I'm
have to.
pulling
Oh,
out
because
there
I have
because
to.
to me
Thank you for
it's,
that.
It's the 800-pound gorilla.
Yes.
It's taken what, over $1 billion in funding
And a
from
pr-
public
and-
schools.
And sadly,
No
a person who
accountability.
is
And
very
with
much
no
involved
accountability.
With no
Right.
accountability. Yeah.
a national
Southfield-
figure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Southfield, what is it, has more
We have
per
more-
capita than anyone
And
else?
it's a-
In Oakland County,
and
In
yes.
Oakland County.
See, well, Dave, I think we've talked about this, but what bothers me so much, how the charters became so important and they took over, is that parents, bless them, if they were unhappy with something that went on in their own school, they would pull their kid out and find another, rather than speaking to the teacher or speaking to the principal and saying, these are my problems, and perhaps they could have been solved rather than simply just running
And
away.
there are schools that are not so good,
Oh, we know
especially
this.
in the Detroit area.
Yes,
They
we
may
know
feel
this.
that walking to school or going to my child is not safe on the way to and from school. And this provides some alternative. I would much rather see us expand school of choice and allow people to come
Sure.
to Southfield Public Schools.
Sure.
There's a school at the end of my street, Eisenhower Elementary,
Yes.
was opened 1 year.
Yeah.
And then it closed the year after we got here again. How many of our public schools have you had to close in the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Several.
If we look at the last 30 years.
And why are we closing public schools and building charters?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It's to me, it's
It makes
reinventing the wheel.
absolutely no
Well,
sense.
especially when a charter opens and then you don't know whether it's going to be there for 10 years, and then
Absolutely.
within a 10-year period of time, after 2 or 3 years, now it's closed, and then
Right, and not only
No
that,
one
their
should make money
teachers
off
don't
of
get paid
educating
as
their
well.
children.
that's
There's
exactly
so much
right.
this.
Yeah, it's for profit. Yeah.
Yeah, it is for profit, so the teachers don't get paid properly,
Yeah,
and
right.
they don't.
Ridiculous.
They tout being wonderful,
Yeah.
but they're not.
The studies have shown that they are not doing any better
No, than the
than,
than the
I mean,
publics.
and that goes up to the highest level. Our Secretary of Education is from Michigan.
I know.
And
But
if they were
she doesn't
to,
get it.
if
If
they
she doesn't
were-
get
Well,
it,
because she's part of that
she does.
family that owns
Is
80
profiting.
gazillion.
Yeah.
profit, yeah.
If they were
Charters
to
schools.
mandate that librarian in every school, it would also impact those charters, and it would be
Yes.
very
Absolutely.
interesting to see how they would wiggle around
yeah.
those
Yeah.
criteria.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us again the name of this legislation that's,
I don't have the exact title.
that's well, read us.
There are 3 bills in the Michigan House that would require a school librarian in every school in the
Yes.
state. And they are, if you wanted to know more,
Right, there's the thing.
there's a website, www.saveschoollibrarians.org, O-R-G, /school librarians. And I believe that this has this information. And I can give this to our camera crew so they can put it at the end.
Yes, that's good. But, you know, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
one thing that we didn't talk about, and that leaped out at me on a slightly different subject, is that in recent years, libraries have been under fire from those who think the internet is all they need. That's just all they need.
I know.
Jess,
When I first started in Farmington, I taught 6th grade. And
Oh.
we had we thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny because the kids were given, through their social studies teacher, something to look up. And they were children. I don't want to call them lazy, but a shortcut is
a shortcut is
a
fun.
shortcut is fine.
Yeah.
And they would go looking something up about the government instead of whitehouse.gov. They went to whitehouse.com, and it happens to be a porn site.
Charming.
Oh boy.
And that's the sort of thing that the media specialist right away
She would have he would have leaped in.
came over and said, "Okay, Dave, now listen. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Boys and girls, may I have everybody's attention? And then it was quelled right then.
Of course, of course.
But when you don't have that,
Yeah.
Well, so many.
Yeah, who's gonna
you've
give
got
them that info? Yes.
hysterics over in the corner because there's no adult to look at.
Well, people seem to think that, and again, this is the problem we've found out with fake news and things like that. The internet is not safe. It's not accurate.
Fascinating.
It's not. It's not what
Imagine
everyone
such a
thinks it
thing.
is. There's a nice quote. In the information super ocean,
Yes.
librarians give us floaties and teach us how to swim.
That's
And that's what a
Say-
school librarian
one more
does.
time.
They-
One more time.
Say it
In
was
the
slowly.
information super ocean, librarians give us floaties and teach us how to swim. Because
Nice.
if you can swim, then you can identify
Yes.
some of the.
Some of
in
the
the
non-
metaphor, you can identify the good, the bad, the
Yes.
ugly.
Yes.
And
The
someone once asked me,
sharks.
why would a porn site want that website name?
Oh, easy to know.
Because
people-
they get money every time somebody goes there,
Sure.
whether or not they wanted to go there or
Right,
not.
right, that's
It's
right.
just how many clicks did you get?
That's right.
So they don't care that a small child did it because, again, it's about the almighty dollar.
Of
Right.
course it
And that
is.
gets back to the media specialist piece. I'm not really in love with the job title.
I don't
Right.
like it either. Yeah.
But I do understand where that ties into what the librarian has to have exposure to,
Right,
and,
right.
and proper training and
So,
help.
so what you're saying is that the word librarian only evokes the word books. But media specialist lets people know that that person can do other things. Is that what you're saying?
It's
That's-
kind of like janitor versus custodian.
Yeah.
That's
They're
right.
both doing
That
the
Twix
same job, but
commercial.
one sounds a little better.
Right. I'm just curious
Yeah.
because you know, it's just, wow.
It's not even quite that. It's not even quite that. When you have a library with a large bank of computers that various teachers have to come in and reserve for classes, a media specialist is actually much better at saying to that teacher, okay, you're teaching civics to 10th graders. Here's their curriculum. What exactly are you doing? Let me identify a couple sites that your kids might use. And then on the whiteboard behind the bank of computers, that media specialist has
They become a
set
team.
they
Exactly.
team with that teacher, and then and then also will walk around. The teacher might be putting out a fire here or over here. The media specialist is walking around making sure that everybody is on task because he or she knows what those students are supposed to be
And
looking
if
up.
I'm just going to let everybody know that,
Sorry.
no problemo. We have a little less than 7 minutes left.
Oh my.
Okay.
So let's try to be terribly intelligent, and as we have been, you are only marvelous.
Thank
I have to tell
Thank
you.
you so much.
You are absolutely incredible.
I did find
So-
the House bill numbers.
Oh yes, let's
Oh,
give
The
yes,
those
House
out.
please.
bills are House Bill 5909
5909.
would require one school librarian per school system. 5910, House Bill 5910 requires one certified media specialist per
Yes.
system. And House Bill 5911 would designate someone within a school system to be that person. So 5909, 5910, and 5911, if you like to look up those informational points.
That's
Okay, great.
astonishing, isn't
So,
it?
so
Thank
I have,
you.
I have a
Yes,
question. I have a
please.
question. So how do we turn around and remedy the fact that most kids and college kids don't know how to put their imagination and their thoughts on paper? We're getting to that point
Yes.
now.
Well, let's see. Yeah, you're right.
And so I just want to ask you, Dave,
Oh,
you know, and Terry, you know, because we're getting to that point now because of the internet and just doing all this, that the imagination and their thoughts, they're having a real serious problem now. And it's a problem with the teachers because the teachers now have to see. Teachers are so awesome and so resilient because whenever there's a obstacle that comes up, they find a way to get around it and try to persevere and move forward.
Push forward.
but I think
yes.
that's part of the problem. I think that our teachers are playing a game of whack-a-mole. because they're finding they have all these problems that are getting in the way of teaching, and they're being asked to do so many things that are not necessarily what they should be, what they
Okay.
what they
And what
best
they've
at.
been trained to
But
do, yes.
I think also students are getting to the point, possibly again, where they're not, they're looking at the internet as a place where you go and you find out the answer.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And instead of maybe like, we need to stop treating the internet like it's an encyclopedia or like it's a dictionary. The internet is like a whole nother dimension.
Yes.
And creativity, curiosity, those are things that are not, we don't teach those.
Yeah, yeah.
But and that again, I think goes back to the parents. But I think also the school library can be the place for exploring.
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if a student is well, I have to do this to stay to this test, so I pass this test, so I get to that grade. I think we're over mandating tests again at the federal and the state level.
Yeah, that's another
So that
subject.
they're so busy trying to learn to the test that they're not exploring who am I?
That's the biggest
What
problem.
could I be?
And now let's let Yolanda jump in.
I think
Fantastic, David, thank you.
because as I think back to some conversations we've had as a board in the last few years, we did hear some infighting almost, but with regards to, and I get back to, because our space is pretty defined, and we deal a lot with our collective units,
Yeah,
bargaining units and things.
Yes.
And I found, and those relationships can be very good, and if everyone's communicating, working well together. But a few
But-
years ago, I did find that a teacher who had a course load, perhaps it's social studies or English or math, maybe they have six different groups of kids that come in every day, didn't feel the same commitment to the task that the librarian had. She or he is there the same amount of time. Do they interact with as many students? Are they writing lesson plans and curriculum, getting those kinds of things together? A good one is. But I don't feel like they oftentimes really appreciated the role, and so that's, we can only take out what they allow.
Wow.
And so being that role in that capacity, it lends itself to a little bit of, political side and a little bit of bureaucracy. So it's unfortunate that I didn't see more support of the librarian space from who they were paying their dues to.
Thank you for that. We are going to start winding up.
Okay.
Sure.
Because I have to tell you, it's just, has this been a fast hour? Or
It
has
has.
Yes.
And I do this all the time. I'm always astonished at the people living in our town who are so spectacular. Now, you're not, so don't worry about it.
Oh,
It's a high bar.
don't worry.
But no, I have loved, this man has been so supportive of our school. It's just an astonishing, and now that I know you, I
Yes.
know you mean to have the very, very best for our kidlets, our kids, and our students, whoever they are, whatever
But
name I want to
have
give
to stop
them.
her though, because I've sat in on many of her reading, for the children, and it's astounding how much energy she has,
Yes.
and she gets the kids involved. And I'm sitting back there trying to keep still, and next thing I know, I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing.
Well, Uni does. Uni brings a lot more to celebrity readers.
See,
than
I just
others.
wanted to turn it back to her because
Yeah.
she's such a great reader and celebrity reader.
That's
at that,
because,
and that's what we call her.
because I can't stand those children, you know that.
Can I take a second
Sir.
just to explain what that is?
Oh,
Oh,
please.
good. I was going to ask
Yeah.
Uni to do it.
Okay.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
go
Well,
for it.
Celebrity Readers is a program that came about through the Partners in Education. Partners in Education is a wonderful program that's kind of fluctuating this year,
It's
so we
not
hope
a
to see it
yeah,
come back.
Yes.
But I became a partner in education. It's business people and government people
Yes.
who believe in the schools and want to help.
Yeah.
So we would meet quarterly during the school year. We would come up with things. I ended up chair of the literacy committee.
Wow.
Okay.
We came up with a program where we said, it's so important to learn how to read. What if we were to bring in members of the community who come, spend a half an hour with the children, either read their favorite books or what have you, tell them how reading is important in your job because it makes more relevancy. to that. If mom says it's important, yeah, that's mom. She's trying to make
Right.
me better.
Yes, yes.
But somebody comes out and says, "Here's how I read in my daily life."
Oh, sure.
It means something.
Thank
Oh,
you,
yes, it
darling.
does.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
it
that.
And
absolutely
I
does.
seriously,
So people
folks,
could belong to Celebrity Readers.
yes, they can, and they
right.
better, doggone it, they better.
Oh, no.
So, thank you, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
just,
you.
It's just wonderful, and I
Yes.
thank my Southfield people here at the station who have always been supportive and wonderful. And Southfield, mwah, we love you.